Thank you for auditing Professor Sky's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who is currently negotiating with his wife in the other room. She's putting up some shelving, and she's like, I just want to make a little bit of noise. So if you hear a little bit of noise, that's her setting up the bookshelf. It's actually a TV shelf. It's a whole thing. That has nothing to do with today's review of the album New Long Leg by Dry Cleaning. I should say right off the bat that the Dr. and Mrs. Payne, my wife in the other room there, this does get her stamp of approval. She doesn't like everything I review, but she listened to this and said, I like the way that it sounds, I like the soundscape. Now that makes sense. This is a very agreeable, enjoyable listen, and it's part of this new, I don't know if it's new, but it's new to me, post-punk renaissance that we appear to be going through, right? Where there's just, it seems like every week there's a new interesting post-punk album. But this is the thing, as my, my job here or my hobby here is to come up with a review, but I never want to do reviews that are just like, this is good, 9 out of 10. I always want some kind of framing device. So I can't use the same, listen to post-punk framing device. So how do I do it, right? I mean, here we have this album with this really very well produced, sort of hardly worked music, very raw music with extremely loud bass and loud guitar, but really with this vocalist in the center. This vocalist, Florence Walsh, I want to say is her last name, maybe Welch, I'm not sure. Poetic, mysterious, really cool, at times almost too aloof, but never quite too aloof. Not trying super hard, but also not just doing nothing, just this amazing voice. She has this absolutely amazing voice, but after listening to the entire album, I'm not sure if she could even sing Happy Birthday. She doesn't sing at all. So the initial thing I was going with was something kind of cute and kind of stupid, I think there's a pretty obvious comparison to be made to someone like Laurie Anderson, Laurie Anderson, who I like quite a bit, kind of artsy, sort of artsy, spoken word, semi-singing, post-punk music. But then I thought, actually, it reminded me a little bit more of her husband, Lou Reed, in a lot of ways, in the way of just being kind of super cool and sort of a little bit too aloof, but also capable of communicating great emotion. So I thought, well, what if they got together and had a baby? It might be her. And that's a joke, of course, because they were married, although I don't think they ever had any kids. But I'm telling you that framing device because I'm not going to use it. I think that's too simple, it's too stupid, and frankly, I think it's probably sexist just to hear a female vocalist who is not doing what you expect and then just compare her to just any other female vocalist who's doing what you don't expect. Instead, I'm going to take you on a trip to myself when I was, I don't know, probably 9 or 10 years old, to the Washington, D.C., to the art gallery, which is the first place I remember looking at a painting and saying these words. What? I could do that. Okay, if you've ever been to an art museum, especially with young people, you will often hear that. What? I could do that. And when I'm thinking about it, I think, what the proper answer to that question, by the way, is no, you couldn't, and you just don't know why yet. And once you understand why you couldn't do that, you will learn to appreciate art of all kinds. It doesn't really matter. But that feeling that I had of, oh my God, I could do that, I had musically with this album. I am a very mediocre musician. I play guitar okay, bass okay, drums a little better. I can sort of almost kind of sing, and I can write kind of interesting lyrics. There's not a single thing on this entire album that I could not recreate. And the way that these lyrics are written, the way that they're written in such a way where it's not like one consistent theme all the way through, or at least it's not that clear, there's no real rhyming structure, one is very tempted to say, out of absolute ignorance, I could do that. So I went online, I looked at some of the paintings from the DC gallery, thinking, what could it have been that I saw? And I found the perfect painting, which I think might actually illustrate this album better than anything else. It is this work right here, by Helen Frankenthaller. Okay, Mountains and Sea. If we look at that here, we see this painting, and it was a very influential, very important painting, but when it was first released in 1952, it was largely criticized. As the artist herself says of it, most people looked at it and they just saw a large paint rag, casually, accidental, and incomplete. I believe you could listen to this album and say the same thing, that it seems at times casually accidental and incomplete, certainly the lyric writing. Yet that work was in fact a revolutionary precursor to what would be called the color field painting. It is a great work. And in 2015 maybe, I went to Buffalo, I saw an entire exhibition of her work, and I realized how great she really is as an artist. But the thing about this image, is that it's hard to embrace. It's not quite fully abstract. It's called Mountains and Sea, and you sort of see mountains and you sort of see sea. So if something is purely abstract, totally disconnected from anything representational, you can embrace it fairly easily because you just go, oh, that's how you feel, and Jackson Pollock is throwing around the paint and blah, all that stuff. Or if it's representational, you can then look at it and determine how faithful is that of a painting of the sea or of the mountains. But this middle ground that this painting has creates an ambiguity. That ambiguity is hard to embrace. And that's my larger question about this album and that art as well. How do you embrace ambiguity? The lyrics, which are the absolute center of this album, are so ambiguous. There's just enough for you to grab onto and think, oh, that connects to this. I sort of understand the general theme, and then it's gone. It's slightly abstract, slightly representational. How do you actually just embrace it? And I realized the way you embrace it is you listen to it, and you pay attention to it, and you go to the gallery in 2015 and you listen to the whole album. You don't just listen to one song, you listen to the whole album. You get wrapped into the atmosphere, which the Dr. and Mrs. Payne very much enjoyed, even though she wasn't listening to the lyrics, and we just have that here. You just are able to appreciate it and enjoy it and do your best. Much like with any abstract art, do your best to understand it and to appreciate it and love it. But just embrace the ambiguity. These may be the most ambiguous lyrics I have ever listened to, okay? And it's partly because they are not intentionally ambiguous, I don't believe. That everything almost means something. Everything almost connects. She avoids truisms, you know? Only maybe once or twice does she do the thing that so many spoken word singers do of finding some kind of tried and true saying and repeating it until it gets kind of abstracted. I think it's, can you imagine the rent? Like she says, that she's British, by the way. Can you imagine the rent? That's not a British accent. But anyways, if that was a British accent, that's how she sounds. Oi, can you imagine the rent? You know, that's the one thing that she repeats. But in general, she stays completely away from that. And the band, to its absolute credit, not only does it support her singing, but they are completely dedicated to the aesthetic of the album. So much of this post-punk movement has the post-punk just layer, you know, mostly guitar-led or sometimes piano-led, and then a little something different to differentiate it, something slightly avant-garde that takes it from just being rock into something more post-punk. But usually they do things like, I don't know, add an extra instrument to make it interesting, you know, add like a string section or add some kind of bizarre hybrid between electronic and acoustic instrumentation. Not on here. They never do that. They just stay completely in their aesthetic, completely in the gallery of Dry Cleaning, the name of the band, which is itself a very ambiguous name. You just never leave this gallery. You're just always there. There's never like one little song where you go, whoa, what was that? I wonder, so it was produced by John Parrish, who I recognized his name, but I didn't know why, and so I looked it up, and he produced a lot of PJ Harvey's best work. And it's funny because maybe he's great because he doesn't do much, because I don't get the sense that he did that much with PJ Harvey either. Like, I feel like he mostly just let her go and probably just helped her achieve the best in what she's doing. He seems like a very non-interventionist producer based on these two works and these two artists, and it seems really good. One of the issues is like the title of the album itself, New Long Leg. Like they described in some interview that I read that it sort of means something, but not really. Like it could mean 3 or 4 things, but not quite. The album cover features a long shadow. And I actually go for a lot of walks with my family at sunset, and I love long shadows, and I love taking pictures of long shadows. We have shadow fights. It's a whole fun thing. I think that's all that it means. But even that title, you're just like, new long leg. I think this ambiguity can also be put in context of modern British post-punk movement with great albums from 2021. I do think it goes quite well with Black Country New Roads. That is what they're called, right? Black Country, yes. I actually own the album, but I don't even remember their name. That is how ambiguous they are. I think their lyrical style and their musical style, the way they dedicate themselves to one musical style and take it to the very end, and lyrically, you can never quite hold on to anything. I think there's something here. I think it could be tied into some sort of question of relationship between music and meaning, but I'm not going to get any further into it. Let's give you an example. Do you want to listen to this? So I'm gonna play you some. I'm not going to play you some. I'm going to give you a link to listen to. If I play some, then the copyright goblins come in and they suck the blood from the video and make everything weird for me. We're just going to take the first track. Why not? You just walked into the gallery of dry cleaning, and you're just going to listen to the first, you're going to look at the first tableau, right? I'm going to put it up here. It's called Scratch Card Lanyard. That kind of play with words is something they do quite a bit. Musically, it is a great example of what they do. It starts off with a drum machine, but that drum machine is quickly replaced by an actual drummer. Very little electronic instrumentation throughout. Really loud bass. The bass player, often bass players are kind of put to the side, especially sort of in modern rock and roll. But boy, the bass player is just really loud, really nice. Guitar kind of clean, very kind of chorusy, and it's all just there to set this upbeat, nice backdrop for the spoken word coolness. Weak arms can't open the door. Kung fu cancel. It will be okay. Just need to be weird and hide for a bit and eat an old sandwich from my bag. Eat an old sandwich from my bag. You sort of can place these all things together. I've eaten old sandwiches from my bag. Have you? I sort of get it. How does it tie into arms weak and kung fu cancel? Is she just looking for words that work, much like in a great painting? Okay, much like in a great painting, is she just looking for colors that go well together, or is she looking for colors that represent what she's looking at? Right? It's hard to really tell here. Kung fu cancel, old sandwiches from my bag. How do they go together? But then the chorus is so frustratingly close to having one clear idea. Wristband theme park, scratch card lanyard, do everything and feel nothing. So that makes sense. That basically makes sense. I can sort of extrapolate meaning from this. The idea that when you go to a theme park, you get a wristband, like here in Western New York, Seabreeze, and like a scratch card lanyard, like these different things that you can wear that indicate that you have permission to go somewhere and do something that is considered fun. But then at the end, you don't feel anything. You do everything and feel nothing. As a language professor, I get all excited because part of my job is teaching irregular verbs, you know? And because you get a little bit tired of teaching conjugations over and over again, I give my students, even French 1 students, you know? French 1 students who are just there to fulfill a general education requirement and don't want to do anything, I talk to them about the difference between the most important verbs, which are all the irregular verbs, to do, to have, to be, right? Avoir, faire, être. Okay, all these important verbs and how they exist and what they mean. And this appears to be kind of a good explanation of that. Do everything, feel nothing. This could be about the emptiness of modern life. Maybe it could be about the illusion of fun. Maybe it could be sort of about that and about something else. Maybe. Embrace the ambiguity. Ambiguity. I love dry cleaning and I love Helen Frankenthaller. It can't all be Jackson Pollock. It can't all be Magritte, you know? All right. There's also a weird part in here where she talks about like having a rocket launcher and wearing like aviator sunglasses. It appears as though there is some amount throughout this album of songs that appear to be about the female experience, semi-feminist statements. This leads well into the next song, Unsmart Lady, where I did find a quote from her describing this song. And I don't know if I'd be able to extrapolate that from the lyrics, but here's what she says. It's about the female experience, and I wanted to use language that's usually supposed to be insulting, commenting on the grooming or the intelligence of a woman. I wanted to use it in a song, and by doing it, slightly reclaim that kind of language. Fat, podgy, non-makeup, unsmart lady. High fever, hair remover. Do you see what I'm saying here? High fever, hair remover? Just, you're alone, right? You're probably alone. You're alone. Just say those words. You will not regret it. High fever, hair remover. You want to try saying it?
High fever, hair remover?
Isn't it nice? It has that you don't quite get why they go together. Obviously, the hair remover refers to grooming and the rituals that are imposed on women by society. But what does it actually mean? Why high fever? Yeah, I'm so close. Embrace the ambiguity. Simple guitar line all the way throughout, slightly discordant. And when I was listening to this song, I realized something. I was actually driving my daughter to school. It's her first day back. Infection rates are low in New York because our state knows what it's doing. And we were kind of nervous, because it's her first day back. And I'm like, oh, let's listen to this song. It's sort of about, she's interested in feminist theories and stuff like that. And so we're playing it. And then I realized while I was listening, if you put really heavy distortion on this song and you had her sing it could actually be a death metal song or even just a punk song. And then that kind of unlocked something in my brain where I realized she's kind of a punk vocalist. She's never yelling or bratty or aggressive, which is the hallmark of a punk singer. But you could easily just take this and have her speak in a stronger accent. Hey, fever, high remover, right? Hey, I got the British accent that time. You could do that and have it be this thing that's maybe easier to understand, easier to embrace. But again, embrace the ambiguity. Strong Feeling starts off with cool kind of shuffling drums, cool single guitar lines. It develops really nicely. Most tracks on this album develop nicely but very subtly. They tend to get fuller as time goes along. She just sort of keeps repeating these lines over and over again. One of the lines she repeats is, "It's Europe." So I think this might be a song that's about Europe and about European conquest. She sings about this, according to Lyric Genius, about this blue and white vase in a British museum, Chinese with Dutch figures. She just literally describes this thing. You get the sense that she's just walking around in London, and much like I was walking around in DC, and just kind of commenting on things in an art gallery. She talks about Holbein's The Ambassadors, very famous painting, which is not in London, I don't think. So I don't know why she was talking about that. And then she even basically quotes the girl from Ipanema, long and lean and young and lovely. So I can't quite tell. It seems like with her repeating "It's Europe," this is about sort of European cultural domination and appropriation. And you never guess what I'm going to suggest we do. Embrace the ambiguity. Next track, Leafy, another track that really builds, another drum machine that kind of goes away. There's this cool kind of single guitar line over bass, and then claps come in, and then there's a real drum. You have to really pay attention to what's going on in the music because the vocals are so up front. The vocals just dominate everything that the poor band is back there hey, we're also doing some pretty cool stuff over here. And where does that romantic jealousy come from? Te amo, Manuel. Married then, her hippo. Every day he's a dick. I don't know. And there's even some comedy in here. More espresso, less depresso. That's that's kind of a goofy, funny line. There's even, I realized guitar-wise, I don't know. I assume that whoever it is who's playing guitar on this, I apologize for not knowing the names. I do minimal research. I do research that helps make a bigger point, but I don't do research what is the name of people. I just think that's less important. Very kind of Neil Young style guitar, meaningful, simplistic solos, strong lines that are melodic but are not blistering. Again, going back to the idea of I could do that, but of course I couldn't. New Long Leg has one of the funniest images in the entire album. Reverse platform shoes. You just think about that. what would a reverse platform shoe be? And she talks about it as like a shoe that puts you deeper in the ground. I don't know. I don't. I mean, I guess there are some actresses who had to do that when they would act next to taller men. I mean, shorter men, right? Like everyone who's ever been in a movie with Tom Cruise, every woman usually has to have some form of reverse platform shoes. I don't think that's what she's talking about, though. The guitar line's kind of REM-like, too. I'd say REM is another good sound comparison, sort of early REM, clean guitars, doing things in a minimalist way. There's a do-do-do in this song. She sort of sings. One of two times on the album where she kind of sings. Maybe she can sing Happy Birthday. And then this weird line, you wouldn't trust a dentist with a messy backyard like this. I don't know. I don't know what it means, but I like it. The next track is called John Wick. And according to the notes, it is not about John Wick. And this is something which, if I had a complaint about the album, it was just a working title, you know? And like when you're a band and you don't have a title for a song, you often have a working title. You know, like in my band back in the 90s, we had one song that we just called Tuvalu because we looked at a map and that's some place in the South Pacific, and we never changed the name of that song. They had lyrics and everything, but it was always Tuvalu. So whenever you see a band do that, it's usually a little solipsistic, a little bit like looking in at themselves, a little too insular, and it's sort of indicating there maybe not be a lot to say. Now, that's not the case. She does have a lot to say, but just having a throwaway song title like that, I don't know. It doesn't sit as well with me as the rest of the album. And the song itself is kind of a jam song anyways. It's like a guitar is like kind of soloing behind. She does kind of a at some point, which is kind of funny. Interesting lyrics here. I think, so she talks about getting pissed on at the big Sainsbury's, which I think is like a store in England, I assume. And then she says, if you're an Aries, I'm an Aries. And so I was like, oh, so this is like a comment on astrology? Okay. But then I realized it's a joke, like urine, pissing on me in Sainsbury's. If you're an Aries, I'm an Aries. But I still don't know. I still don't know what it means. She has a great verse talking about how the TV show Antiques Roadshow changed and how it's now about the values and less about the history of the objects. And that what we actually like about the show is the build-up, not just the reveal. I don't know why she's saying that. I don't know. I can't tell. I don't know if she's some genius making some larger point, tying things together, or if she's just a cool person who's making interesting points and hoping that you connect the dots for her. It doesn't really matter, but it's a good point. Antiques Roadshow used to be a lot better. More Big Birds is the most drum-led song. It's actually like a drum solo that starts everything off, a doubled voice. Another do-do-do in here. She kind of sings constantly about a brain being replaced by something. ALC is the song that reminds me most of Pavement. Basically all post-punk music to me is just on some scale of when does it start to sound like Pavement. Very echoey drums in the back that seem like they could be played by one hand. Yeah, and then wait, is this the last track on the album? I think it is. Boy. I think it is the last track on the album. Or maybe I'm mixing this up with another track. No, it's not. I'm sorry. So that's ALC. The last track is called Everyday Carry. And that starts off with my favorite... Oh, sorry. It's 23 minutes in. I am not going to restart the video now. So please excuse my mistake. You aren't even making much noise over there. Oh, okay. How's the video going?
I love it.
Okay, good. At least someone loves it. My earliest fan over there. So the track Everyday Carry starts off with my favorite food. She just says chocolate chip cookies. And I don't know. I don't know why she's saying chocolate chip cookies, but I'm happy that there's a song that starts off with the line chocolate chip cookies, crappy, crazy pizzas. Crappy, crazy pizzas. Like crappy? Crazy pizzas. What is she saying? How is she trying to do it? It starts off with these lines in a kind of flangy guitar and bass, and she repeats these lines over again. That's when she says, can you imagine the rent? And I realized that, like, I was so drawn to her saying, can you imagine the rent a couple times? Like, something I could understand. Not like fat budgie or whatever the other stuff is that she's singing. Like, can you imagine the rent? I felt so comforted. so appeased by this line that was repeated and that I could understand, something that you could imagine hearing in any other song. And then the rest of the song happened. Here's some more lyrics. I love this lyricist, by the way. Droopy flute solo comes in now. Galumph Lump. Huge white geese please us all. Massive major arsehole. All the children say, I've got enchanted eggs. I don't know. We just had Easter. Yes, 2 days ago. There were some eggs. Maybe all the children say it. Enchanted eggs? The egg hunt? I don't know. The flute solo? There's no flute solo on this album. Galumph Lump? I don't know what that means at all. Huge white geese please us all? Is this an anagram or something? Am I supposed to like move these words around so they mean something? I don't quite know what they mean. I can't quite read it. I can't quite parse it. I can't quite figure out what's supposed to be mountain, what's supposed to be ocean. I can't quite figure out how intentional it is, how unintentional it is. And this time you can just say with me, you just have to embrace the ambiguity. Hair remover, laser, what was it? Laser remover, hair remover? Hair fever, high remover. High fever, hair remover. This song develops really nicely. This has the most, like remember how I said they kind of really stick to the plan throughout the entire album? This is sort of the exception. It really develops a lot in the middle section with this crazy guitar feedback that comes in, kind of automated madness, and then it comes back and there's just super awesome rocking drums that just go all the way throughout. So there you go. There's my review of Dry Cleaning. I hope you enjoyed the framing devices. I hope I didn't repeat myself too much, but it's okay if I did, because I've learned one thing from teaching, and that is if you repeat yourself a lot, then students will at least remember the one thing you repeated. So with that in mind, embrace the ambiguity. We all live in the yellow submarine, and there's the camera.